Good morning and welcome to Get Licensed to Bill. This is a free online workshop for those who want to get their California Contractor license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the parts of the license application and give you practical tips to help you complete it correctly, and to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California Contractor's license. We'll also help get you ready for your licensing exams and give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test day. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractors State Licensing Board, the government agency responsible for regulating the California's construction industry. I'm Fuad Karagozlu, Chief of Licensing at CSLB. Joining us is Dana Donofrio from the CSLB License Verification Unit. Good morning, Dana. All right, looks like Dana is dealing with some technical difficulties, so I will continue. CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy for our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including one labor representative, one local building official, and one representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature. Please note, CSLB authorized test centers are open. It is recommended that applicants wear masks on test day. Before arriving for your test, check it and follow your local COVID-19 mask guidelines. If you are watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and want to ask questions, you will need to join us on WebEx. There is a banner with a link on top of our homepage, www.cslb.ca.gov. That is also where you can download this presentation to follow along. The presentation file includes clickable bonus links that appear on the slides throughout this workshop. We are going to present a lot of information today, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We will archive the video of this workshop and put it on our YouTube channel so you can go back and watch it again. To ask a question on WebEx, use the Q&A feature, not the chat feature. On the bottom right of your screen, make sure you send your questions to all panelists. Finally, we tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how you document your work experience and what credit you can get for your education or military service. Those questions are fine, but we would ask that you wait to send us those questions until after you see that part of the workshop. We will go through your questions at the end of our presentation, which should last about 45 minutes. The information obtained during this webcast is not, nor is intended to be legal advice. While this webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of the law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during the webcast are for informational purposes only. If you have questions about the application of the law for a specific situation, you should contact an attorney who is familiar with California construction law, or review the latest edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on the CSLB website or purchase it directly from the publisher LexisNexis. And on the screen, you see the links to both for the both at the bottom of the screen. Okay. Here is a list of what we are going to cover today. We will take you through the process for applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Why get a contractor license? The minimum qualifications you will need to get a license and what credits you might qualify for. The type of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications, including our B2 residential remodeling classification. We'll spend a lot of time giving you tips on how to help fill out your application, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications, fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check, and we will help you get you ready for the exam or exams you will need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you will need to have in place before your license is issued, things like bond and insurance. First, we will look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more. That total includes both labor and materials, no matter who purchases the material. The law doesn't let you break down a project into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours for the job totals 500 or more, you need a contractor's license. So what is the definition of a contractor? The definition comes from the state's Business and Profession Code. In this case, it's section 7026.1. We have got a link to that code at the top of the page if you download the presentation. I will read the entire code, but pay special attention to the part we underline. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner builder, firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, purports to have the capacity to undertake, or submits a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. In other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor license just to advertise that you can do the construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if the bid totals $500 or more. So you may be asking yourself, why should I get a license? Here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows you have taken the steps to get licensed and you're serious about your career choice. It allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work you do. There is value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanics lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and or a $5,000 fine, and potential administrative fines anywhere between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
Okay, so what do you need to get your license? First, it is important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations. But know that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. Here's the short list of minimum qualifications that you will need. First, you must be at least 18 years of age. You must have either a valid Social Security number or a valid individual taxpayer identification number or an I-10. You can qualify the license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journey person, foreperson, supervising employee, or contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can also get a qualifier for the license who has that required experience. We will spend time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application later in this presentation.
It may be possible for you to substitute your education, technical training, and apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions on this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience due to the number of applications we receive and process every month. We don't have the staff time that would be needed to prejudge your experience. We can only review your documents after you apply for your license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be substituted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months of education credit. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB with written documentation. That means a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates you earned, or get official technical school or college transcripts. Have your transcripts mailed to you. Do not open the envelope. Leave it sealed and included with your CSLB applications packet. Note that high school courses will not earn you any credit towards your contractor's license.
If you're looking to get education credit to meet the 4 years or 48 months of experience, you'll need to get your transcripts first. This is the most important slide of this entire workshop. This is the kind of credit you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some areas, we are only giving you averages. You will see that your credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We're not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you see on this slide. So our best advice is do not rely on the combination of your experience and education credits to barely hit the 4-year experience mark. There is always the real possibility you will not get as much education credit as you were hoping. Let's go through the chart from the most credit you can get to the least. The most education credit you can get is for a Bachelor of Science degree in Construction Management. That degree will get you the full 36 months of credit. Next is a master's or bachelor's degree in business or a law degree. Any one of those will get you 24 months of credit. An associate in science degree in construction management will get you 18 months credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average of 18 months credit. An associate degree in a major besides construction management will get you an average of 6 months credit. Credit for individual college classes is given on case-by-case basis, usually with a maximum of 6 months credit. Apprenticeship completion certificates will get you 24 to 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker's apprenticeship will get you 24 months credit for the C20 HVAC and C43 sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship gets you 36 months in C7 low voltage and C10 electrical classifications only. If you have transcripts for other technical training you've taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credits to try and squeak by the 4-year or 48-month requirement.
If you served in the military, some of that service might count as well. On the bottom of the page, you will see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistant Program, where you can learn more. The license qualifier also must pass 2 different exams. both taken on a computer at one of CSLB's authorized test centers, currently with PSI exams. One exam of California business law, the other is the specific trade covered by the license. We also have limited specialty licenses, which we will discuss later. Those licenses only require the qualifier to take the law and business exam. As we mentioned, the qualifier is the one who must take and pass the required exams or qualify for a waiver. We are not going to spend a lot of time on a waiver, only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both exams in very specific situations. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have included the bonus link at the bottom of the page. The qualifier must also undergo a criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in a position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you are trying to get a B general building contractor license and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as the project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing you're going to need to determine before applying for your license is which type of entity your business will be. There are 4 types. First is a sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California are sole ownerships. Second, a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licensees are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the general partners or a responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. That's 2% of our licenses. Finally, a limited liability company or LLC, where a responsible managing member, responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. About 1.5% of California construction companies are LLCs.
Now let's talk about license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filing your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classification list at the bottom of the screen. First is Class A, or General Engineering Contractors. These are contractors who deal with fixed works that require a specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones who build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next is Class B, or General Building Contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires, as part of its construction, at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final class is C, or specialty contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires a special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of a specialized building trades or craft. Examples from this class include C10, electrical contractors. C20, HVAC contractors. C27, landscaping contractors. C36, plumbing. C39, roofing. C46, solar contractors, and C53, swimming pool contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes under the C61 classification. These include the D34, prefabricated equipment class. More than 209,000 contractors hold the C license in California.
CSLB's newest licensing classification is called the B2 Residential Remodeling Classification. The B2 allows contractors who don't have structural framing experience to get a license with CSLB. Here's what interested applicants need to know. The B2 license holder must engage in 3 or more trades or crafts on residential projects. The B2 licensees are also limited to working on existing residential wood frame structures. There are some things B2 license holders cannot do. They cannot make structural alterations to bare loading partitions and walls. They cannot install or extend electrical or plumbing systems, but they can make modifications to existing systems. For example, install recessed lighting or alter plumbing for 2 shower heads. B2 licensees also cannot install or replace an HVAC system. Like all other CSLB licenses, B2 applicants and licensees must comply with CSLB experience, examination, license bond, and workers' compensation insurance requirements. If you have more questions about the B2 license, email the licensing division at licensing@cslb.ca.gov.
All right. When you get ready to apply for a license, here are the 2 forms you will need. On the left is the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There is a bonus link on the left side of the page, so be sure to download this presentation. We'll give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms a little later.
Okay, now let's break down the steps to the application process. First, identify who will be the qualifier for your license. That person will be responsible for exercising direct supervision and control of the company. If you're using an RME or a responsible managing employee as your qualifier, determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. Be aware of companies you pay to connect you with a licensed qualifier. In some cases, these qualifiers are in a different part of the state and cannot exercise the direct supervision needed, or they aren't willing or don't understand their role as a qualifier. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are 2 options. 1, the application for original contractor license, and 2, the application for original contractor's license, examination waiver 7065. We've got links to both at the bottom of the page.
The next step is to determine your company name. Take a look at the application, for example. Some things to keep in mind. Your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than what you are getting. For example, if you are going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you cannot have company of John Smith Plumbing, Construction, Heating, and Drywall. Corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name registered with the California Secretary of State's office. You can also use what is called a DBA, which stands for Doing Business As. The main things to remember here is that DBA name cannot be misleading, and you must use that name in all advertising and on all your contracts. Next, you will want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualifications. Also, your application may be expedited and receive a possible 50% reduction in your initial licensing fee through our military application assistance program. We mentioned that a few minutes ago. There is a bonus link at the bottom of the screen for more information on that program. To participate, you must have not been dishonorable discharged. Be sure to include a copy of your latest DD-214 long form paperwork showing your discharge status with your application. The next couple of items are basic but important. Proofread your application for any missing information. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date the application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your exams. If so, complete the request form and submit it with your application. We will talk about the use of translators a little later.
Next, let's take a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for a criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on the type of business entity. Number 1, all applicants. 2, each corporate officer. 3, each member and manager. 4, each partner. 5, each owner. 6, the responsible managing employee. And 7, all home improvement salespersons. If you are in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called live scan. You can get an updated list of live scan locations in California broken down by county on the Attorney General's website. We have a link here, or you can simply go to the Attorney General's website and search for live scan. You will also see we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you're out of state, it's going to be tough for you to get your fingerprints. That's because you must submit hard copies of them the old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 to 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. So you might want to consider traveling to California to get your electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you have a criminal conviction? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers. There are the nature and severity of the crime, the amount of time that has passed since the conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions which occurred within 7 years of the application date. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back for 3 years of the application date. That's unless the convictions are a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we get based on criminal convictions. You will also note the bonus link to our fingerprint information page.
Okay, along with the education credits we talked about earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop and the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. It is how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years or 48 months of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. The experience must be no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified as opposed to a trainee and can perform trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
There is a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience. So feel free to use additional pages if needed and simply attach them at the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of your work experience forms as you need to prove the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. Be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person certifying your work describes the actual work you perform and the dates in which you perform them. We will now share some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate work experience. Do not copy and paste this information directly into your application. These are just examples.
At the top of this chart is the classification and type of experience you're trying to demonstrate. The first example is journey person experience. The overall theme we'll keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. Note, the work experience form should be completed by your certifier, someone who has knowledge and has observed your work experience for the classification that you're applying for. That person does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Our first example is for Class B, General Building Contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for journey person experience is to be specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work like this. Bob performed rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior, exterior painting and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generally like residential general building trades. For four-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and or supervisory work. Here is an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job site performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior, exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, an unacceptable description would be something generic like residential general building trades. For supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrive at the supervisor level. An example is, as a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exteriors painting, and flooring on residential homes. Once again, unacceptable would be something like residential general building trades. For out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were out of state, military, on federal lands, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journey person, foreperson, or supervising employee. A tip: be specific about your duties and employment circumstances.
Our next example is for the C27 landscaping contractor, first for experience at the journeyman level. The best type of description your certifier would use would be: Jane performed landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be gardening, lawn maintenance, and planting. For a C27 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a foreperson would be something like: Jane oversaw other staff at job site performing landscape construction, maintenance, and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable description again would be something like gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at the supervisor level. The best description would be: as a construction lead on multiple projects, applicant supervised landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. Unacceptable here for the supervising employee would also be something like gardening, yard maintenance, and planting. Finally, for out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors is required. Be sure to include examples for your out-of-state work, as well as work for the military on federal lands or for a government entity. Be sure to be specific when you describe your duties and employment circumstances.
By law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all the information provided on at least 3% of our applications. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation you can use to support your work experience. In the event that your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional documentation, the supporting documentation should not be mailed in with your application. You will only need to provide this information if requested by CSLB staff. On the lower right of the screen, you will see a link to this publication on our website, along with additional information on experience documentation. If you look at the chart, you can see the first column is for documents you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column is for documenting your experience if you have been self-employed. The third column is for documentation you will need if you are applying for a Class B general building contractor license and need to use owner-builder experience to meet the experience requirements. Here is the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, you can click on the link to view and print the publication. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you're asked to provide it in the future. Remember, you're trying to demonstrate 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB staff may contact the certifier of experience or other parties to verify the experience.
One other note, CSLB gets more than 1,000 applications each month, so our application processing staff has seen it all. We've got 2 pieces of advice. First, don't cut and paste from this presentation. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test, by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 Limited Specialty Classification. Okay, that is the content you'll need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, double check it to make sure that you did not miss anything. Be sure to sign and date it as well. And don't forget to include the all-important $450 application fee. You'll pay the initial license fee of $200 for a sole owner license or $350 for a non-sole owner license after you passed your exam or exams. Then put your application packet in the mail to CSLB or hand deliver it to one of our public counters. We've got a bonus link at the bottom of the screen with our office locations.
Okay, parts of the application. We're talking about section 1, business name and address. Section 1 is where you list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, make sure the name that you have selected is compatible with the classification and the entity that you're applying for and is not misleading. If your business name is a corporation or LLC, you will need to make sure that the name you provide in this section matches exactly the business name registered with the Secretary of State. In line 2, you will indicate that classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you are licensed. In section 2, you will select your business entity. If you're applying for a corporation or LLC, you will need to provide a registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. Make sure to pay extra attention to the instruction in this section pertaining to the entity for which you're applying.
Section 3, qualifying individual, full legal name and address. In Section 3, you will list the qualifier's information. Remember, the qualifier is the person that meets the experience requirements and will be responsible for the direct supervision and control of construction operations. The qualifier will be the person taking the exams. On line 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers you've held. You will also need to list a percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you're the only person that will be listed on the license, you would enter 100%. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements. You will need to make sure that you have listed all positions depending on the entity that you have selected. You can find more information on this on pages 2 through 4 of the application instructions. Line 8 is where you will sign and date your application. Section 4, personnel full legal name and addresses. Section 4 is where you will list the personnel information for all remaining personnel that will be listed on the license. For example, if you are applying for a corporation, you will need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, the president, secretary, and treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 6 of the application instructions. If you have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page and include it with your application. For corporations and LLCs, every person who is an officer, responsible manager or member, or director of a corporation or limited liability company shall be listed on the application as a member of the personnel of record for the license. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application in Section 4.
Section 5 is a series of yes and no questions, so we are not going to cover those here. Section 6, qualifier education, apprenticeship, licensure, and military. You may be granted credit towards the 4-year experience requirement based on your education. Question 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official, sealed transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you would need to provide a certificate of completion. Get those sealed transcripts mailed to you, then include the sealed transcripts with your application packet. Do not have the program send transcripts directly to CSLB. You don't want to take a chance that we are not able to match them up with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit based on your education. This credit is not on a year-to-year basis, meaning if you have a 2-year college degree, you won't necessarily be granted 2 years of credit towards the experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received out of the country. If your degree is in any other language other than English, it must be translated and evaluated by an accredited evaluation service that does business within the United States. Certification of work experience, Part 1. Now we will discuss the certification of work experience. Part 1 will be fill out by you, the applicant. Here, you will list the information about your employer, where you gained your experience. If you were self-employed when you gained the experience, please make sure to check the box in line 2. If you're applying for a B, general construction license, and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, make sure to mark the box in line 4 and complete an owner, builder, construction project experience form that we will discuss later. Part 2 of the certification of work experience will be filled out by the certifier. In this section, the certifier must include the
General Building Construction Project Experience, Part 1 of 3. The next form we will discuss is the Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience form. This form only needs to post the date shown is after the date we likely received your paperwork. It's likely we're busy working on your application. As you can imagine, CSLB receives hundreds, if not thousands, of documents every day, and we process them in the order that they've been received. So be sure to take the extra time getting the application right so we don't have to send it back to you to correct and then have to start processing your application again. When your application has been posted, CSLB will send you a notice to schedule for examination and a study guide. You should get your exam notice at least 3 weeks prior to your exam date. CSLB has many authorized test centers throughout California and encourages candidates to take their exams at the nearest test center.
The translator who you provide simply reads you the exam questions. Question 16 on the application asks if you need to use a translator to complete the examination. The translator must be approved by CSLB in advance. You cannot just show up on the day of your examination to the test center with someone to translate the exam for you. When you get an exam date, make sure you do not miss it. If you fail to appear for your exam, you will have to pay a non-refundable $100 fee to reschedule. That fee may be waived once with documented evidence of that fee may be waived once with documented evidence of a medical emergency or other circumstance beyond your control. Also, we have a study guides available for each of our exams. Included in each study guide, you will find a list of sections and topics covered by the exam. They also include sample questions, how each section of the exam is weighted, and recommended resources that you can use to prepare for the examination. These study guides are available online on our website. There is a bonus link to them on the bottom of the screen.
Here's a quick look at 2 of those study exams. The first is the Law and Business exam, which all qualifiers must take no matter which license classification, including the D-Series limited classes. You can see the guide contains a breakdown of examination topics, some test strategies, sample questions, and resources that were used to help create the exam. You will see the same format on the B General Building Study Guide. We would recommend that you really pay attention to the exam content here, especially how we have broken down what percentage of questions there will be on each of the 5 topics on the exam. On the lower right of both of these 2 slides, you'll see bonus links to the actual study guide, as well as a link to the complete list of study guides.
On your testing day, plan to arrive at least 15 minutes early for your exam. Give yourself extra time to get checked in. Applicants are recommended to wear a face mask or other face coverings. Check and follow your local COVID-19 mask guidelines before arriving for your test. We have also produced a short what to expect on test day video that you can watch on our YouTube channel. The link is at the bottom of your screen.
You'll take your exam on a computer using a keyboard and a mouse. Before starting, you'll see an on-screen tutorial that will take you through the process. The exam itself consists of multiple choice questions. You'll also see a space on each question where you can, if you want, submit a comment about the question. You'll get 3.5 hours to complete each exam. Don't arrive late, or that may reduce the amount of time you get to complete your exam, or you may not be admitted to the exam and will have to reschedule. You'll get your results at the end of the exam. If you don't pass the exam, you will not be allowed to review the questions you missed, but you will get a statement showing how you did on each section of the exam. You can reschedule the exam as many times as you need to within the 18-month period, as long as you pay the non-refundable $100 rescheduling fee each time. Each rescheduled test must be at least 3 weeks prior to the previous test.
After you pass your exam, what happens next? First, you will need to pay your initial licensing fee. Like we said, $200 for sole owner licenses and $350 for a non-sole owner license. That will be good for 2 years. You'll also need to complete an online asbestos open book exam. Plus, you will need to file your required $25,000 contractor surety bond and possibly some other bonds depending on what type of business entity you will have. You will need to get your required insurance policy. If you have got employees, you will need to get workers' compensation insurance. If you don't have employees, you must file a workers' compensation exemption with CSLB, you can also submit this online. Please note that worker compensation insurance is also required for all contractors applying for C8 concrete, C20 warm air heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, C22 asbestos abatement, C39 roofing, and C61 D49 tree service classifications, whether or not they have any employees. If you are going to be an LLC, limited liability company, you will also need liability insurance. See our website for more information. Please note that your insurance company or broker can submit your insurance information to CSLB directly on our website.
In about 5 to 10 business days after your license has been issued, CSLB will send you a wall certificate and plastic pocket license card. Display the wall certificate in your main office or chief place of business. Carry your pocket card with you, especially in situations where you are going to solicit business, talk to potential customers, or sign contracts. We encourage consumers to ask to see your pocket license. If you're going to have salespeople working for you, be sure to get them registered as a home improvement salesperson with CSLB. Check our website for more on how to do that. Your license will be good for 2 years. It will expire on the last day of the month when it was issued. Be sure to put that expiration date on your calendar, in your phone, or anywhere you need so you won't forget it. CSLB will send you a renewal notice in the mail approximately 60 days before it expires, but ultimately, it is your responsibility to renew your license on time.
Here are a couple of other important deadlines to keep in mind. First, notify CSLB within 30 days if you move or change your business address. Your renewal notice will be sent to the address of record that we have got on file. If you are not at that address anymore, you are probably not going to get it. Plus, the Postal Service will not forward the state government mail. Finally, notify CSLB within 30 days of all changes to personnel on your license, especially when it involves the qualifier of the license.
Once you get your license and get to work, you might want to hire someone as a salesperson to solicit, sell, and negotiate home improvement contracts on your behalf outside of your place of business. These people are called home improvement salespersons, or HIS. Without an HIS, the official personnel of record on a license are the only ones who can solicit, sell, negotiate, or execute a contract. That includes individual contractors, license qualifiers, partners, corporation officers, and LLC responsible managing officers, members, managers, or employees. An HIS can work for more than one contractor. The licensee must notify CSLB when they either associate or disassociate an HIS with their license. This process can now be completed online as well.
There are a couple of exceptions to note. First are those who only schedule appointments for the contractor or registered HIS, and bona fide service and repair people. These are the folks you call out for repairs, including for things like air conditioning, heating, plumbing. But those service and repair people are limited to the work that was initially requested by the buyer or homeowner. For example, if your air conditioning goes out and you call a HVAC company to come out, the service person does not have to be a registered salesperson. But if they go beyond the repair itself and sell you a new HVAC system, they will have to be a registered HIS. Also, don't employ an unregistered salesperson. That subjects you to administrative discipline, and the salesperson might get a citation or possibly even a criminal misdemeanor. We have got bonus links at the bottom of this page if you want to look at the actual code sections of law. Okay, that is our presentation. Now is to answer your questions.
Okay, so good morning. Cooper Williams has a question. What book do you recommend to study? I'm only trying to get a C13 license, not a general. All books online I have found are for general contractors. So we actually don't recommend books. Your knowledge of your classification should be your experience, that you have to go back on. We do have the study guides as we stated in the workshop, but it won't have everything, obviously, that's in the test. All the questions aren't there. But for me, I would tell you to rely on your experience. Books might just be books, it's not going to be your everyday what you're doing out there in the field. Again, Cooper Williams, another, I have 20 years experience with the C-13 and the Marines as an engineer. I just have people I have worked with in the past who can vouch for my experience. So that's fine. Your experience does have to be 4 years within the last 10 years. And your certifier can be anyone who has firsthand experience of your experience. It doesn't have to be an employer. It does not have to be a licensed contractor. Do we have to still by Cooper? Do we have to do a live scan if we have in the last 18 months for CSLB? I did one for a home improvement sales license. As long as that registration is still good, then your fingerprints will transfer over. If it is expired or if it's been canceled, chances are your fingerprints have been removed. But if what you're saying is you've done it with 18 months and you're still current, your fingerprints will transfer over to your application. And then also Cooper, I only have one employee. Would he be listed on my license or should I put him there? He's an independent contractor. It depends on the entity that you're applying for, Cooper. If it's a sole ownership, he can't be listed. If he's an employee, obviously you're going to hold workers' compensation to cover that employee. So it's really based upon what you're doing as your entity, whether or not he can be listed. If you were a corporation, we would recommend if he's an officer that you've registered with the Secretary of State, he would need to be listed on the license. If he's a member or manager and you have an LLC, he'd have to be listed on the license. But if you're a sole ownership, he's just an employee.
One thing I want to add to that one is if it's your employee, you don't really want to put it on your license if you have corporation or LLC, because they can change everything within the license. So the officers, the members or managers, they have to be listed on the license, but your employees is up to you. But I'd let you know if they're coming as officer, member or manager, then they can make changes to your license history. So go ahead, Dana.
Okay. Adam, my apologies, but I'm still a little unclear and prefer to have this answered expressly. I've been a licensed building contractor in North Carolina for about 18 years and have been actively engaged for more than the required last 4 years. I've built around 100 single-family homes in that time. Does this qualify for a California experience requirement? Please advise. So, Adam, it could. We do, again, have to have 4 years within the last 10 years. It could be by your employer, or if you were the licensee in that other state, someone who has firsthand knowledge of your experience can sign as your certifier on your certification of work experience form. As long as our criteria meets what you have performed in North Carolina, it sounds like it possibly could be a good fit. Remember that RB is structural, and that you have to have 2 unrelated trades with that. So if you meet that criteria, you could submit your experience on your application. And again, we would review it first. There's no pre-qualifications, but it does sound like it could possibly meet the requirements. Ted, for applying for a B2 license where our company's work will be coordinating plumbing, HVAC, and electrical contractors, what experience would count towards the 4-year requirement? So for B2, again, it's going to be 3 or more trades or crafts on a residential project, but you cannot make structural alterations, and that's through load-bearing partition or walls. There's no installation or extended electrical or plumbing systems, and you cannot install or replace an HVAC system. What they are allowed to do, if we're talking about those 3 classifications, is to make modifications like installing recessed lighting, altering the plumber for 2 shower heads, so it can be 3 unrelated trades. You just can't do the installation or extend those systems as I suggested. And again, no structural with the B2. Chin, can we use overseas experience? How can a company certify electronically? So you can use your experience from anywhere in the world. We often get out of country experience, and the company or somebody, again, a certifier who has firsthand knowledge of that experience will have to be your certifier. Again, it doesn't have to be the licensee. It can be a fellow employee, but somebody who was there, who had firsthand knowledge of your experience, can, under perjury of penalty of law, certify your experience when you send that in. Just make sure that whatever classification that you apply for, that the trades that your certifier lists are in compliance with the classification that you're applying for. Ahmed, what do you recommend to study for the B2? Again, my philosophy kind of is your knowledge of your trade is going to be your experience and what you're going to be tested on. We do have study guides. However, again, they do not explore every single question that's going to be on those tests. So I tell applicants that I recommend that they base what they're studying for is what you've done. What did you do? When it comes to the law experience or the law examination, our law book is available online for free that you can download. You can also purchase from LexisNexis. But as far as the trade goes, I recommend basing it on what you've done. Anastasia, what forms do you fill out if you have a General B license in Arizona? If you're talking about reciprocity, and you want to possibly have your trade exam waived, with your completed application, which would still have to show your experience 4 years out of the last 10, you could submit a reciprocity form that has already been completed by the Arizona State Contractors Board with your application. Depending upon what is written or what we see from Arizona, we could possibly be able to waive your exam. For the B trade only, you would still be required to take the law. If that doesn't answer your question, Anastasia, please send us an email at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Kate, does CSLB accept foreign work experience? What documents should be provided? So yes, Kate, we do provide, or we do accept foreign work experience. Again, your work experience can be wherever you lived. So it just has to be in compliance with what classification that you're applying for. And again, your certifier does not have to be your employer per se, but does have to be somebody who has firsthand knowledge of your experience in that classification where you got that experience from. Bianca, I have a bachelor's and master's in art. How many years of experience does this qualify? So Bianca, unfortunately, we can't give you a clear-cut answer on that. You can see the examples that we have listed right now of possible credit that you could receive. It also is dependent on what classification that you send in on your application. Is your degree associated with the class that you're applying for? So I can't give you a clear-cut answer on that, and it will go hand in hand with the classification when you send in your application of how much credit that you could possibly receive. Ahmed is the same thing. I have a civil engineering degree. Does that qualify me for the education requirement? If you look at the slide that's showing right now, the possibilities are there. However, again, we would have to see the classification that you're applying for because the degree has to go hand in hand and be associated to the class. So I cannot give you a clear-cut answer on that. But do make sure that when you send in your application, do not send your transcripts ahead of time. Make sure they either come in with your application or afterwards so that we can match up. That this goes to Ahmed, and here he is, he's applying for this classification. We do tend to get a lot of transcripts and no applications. So that will eliminate, applicants sending in things that, that are just out there and nobody can match it up with anything. So, hi, my father is a licensed contractor. If I want to take over his license, do I have to file for a new license? Okay, so there are different qualifications for possibly taking over a license. If he has a sole ownership, is he retiring? If it's a corporation, have you been listed on the license? There's a little more information that we would need for that. If you could send us an email at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. We can give you a little bit more detailed information, but we will need a little bit more information from you as well. Ambarish, hi, I've studied 4 years diploma and 4 years bachelor degree in electrical engineering and experience from India for 8 years. Do I require an exam? So all applicants will be subject to examination for the classification that you've applied for. The education does not substitute or grant you a waiver for the trade or for the law. You will still be required to take the trade. As seen on the slide here, dependent upon the credit that you would receive for your degree, the maximum that anybody could possibly get would be 36 months. So you would still have to submit 1 year of work experience. But again, that credit is dependent upon your degree and the classification that you have submitted on your application. So yes, you would have to take an exam. And again, because if you've never applied here before, you would have to do that. And you would also have to take the law because there is no waiver of the law in this case. The experience from India, as long as it's 4 years within the last 10 years, would be acceptable. Again, someone who has firsthand knowledge of that experience, where that experience was had, would have to certify you, and you would send that in on your application completed by your certifier. Bianca, can my certifier be related to me? We don't prohibit that. They could have been the one who works side by side with you. So if you've seen the certification of work experience, it does have a lot of options that you can use. You can use as your certifier a fellow employee, an employer, a contractor, a business associate, a union representative. There's quite a few different options that you can use. So we don't ask if that person is related to you, but we do want to see, again, on your certification of work experience, that the work pertains to the classification you're applying for, and the time is the 4 years within the last 10 years. Embarish, I don't have a SSIN and no tax identification number. I'm on adjustment of status. I'm not sure what an adjustment of status is. However, to apply for a contractor's license in the state of California, it is a requirement that the individual has a social security number or an I-10 in order to apply for a license. Unfortunately, if you do not, I would say that you could not apply. Sheila. I worked as an architect in India, but not in USA. How can I get my general contracting license? So an architect, we don't license architects. We do license general builders. So dependent on what your experience in India would be what we would want to see on your certification of work experience. If you drew up plans, that's not going to qualify you for the general building contractor's license. If you actually hammer and nailed things, if you were a supervisor on a license that did general building and you were supervising employees, if you were a foreperson, that work experience, depending on what is listed, would or could possibly be acceptable. But as an architect, if I were to do a definition here in the US, drawing up plans and whatnot would not qualify you for the general building license. Bianca, can a certifier be a client? Yes, they can. Again, business associate, there are probably about 7 different options that you have for the certifier that's listed on the certification of work experience form. Embarish, I am also an electrician license holder in Canada. Do I require an exam or not? If you haven't been licensed here in California, yes, you would have to exam. There would be no waiver exam from another country or another state unless we had reciprocity and the proper forms were completed. So the exams are necessary, the exams are mandatory, and they would not be waived for another country or another state, again, unless we had reciprocity and it was approved. Bianca, I am not listed on the LLC. I work for and am an independent contractor. Does a license apply for that LLC, or do I need to be listed to the LLC? So Bianca, to apply for the qualifier, if you're replacing the qualifier, you would have to show your experience, again, 4 years out of the last 10 years. And possibly you would have to test for the exams. If you're not listed on the license, if you haven't tested before for the classification in California, it is very likely that you will have to do that. This would not be a brand new application as an original contractor's license. This would be a replacer, replacing the qualifying individual application, which is also listed on our website. But that would be if you are replacing the qualifying individual, which I believe you said earlier in a comment. Bianca, if you want to shoot us an email over at licensing@cslb.ca.gov, we can give you a little bit more detailed information, depending on if you can give us a little bit more information in the situation. Ahmed, can I have my wife's name under the LLC name as an owner and I, as a qualifier, take the license? So LLCs have managers and members. There are no owners. And whomever you have appointed manager or member on the LLC, if you have them listed with the California Secretary of State, they will have to be listed on the application. You could still be the qualifier on the application. However, it doesn't matter whose name is a manager or member. If you're a manager or member, you're going to list yourself on the application. If your wife is a manager or member, they're going to be listed on the application. Your LLC and your corporations have to be registered before you submit your application. For LLCs, we do require that a statement of information or an SOI also be completed before your application is submitted so that we do know who is listed on the application or who should be listed on the application. But yeah, you could still be the qualifier. You would have to take the test, and whoever you appoint to be managers and members on the LLC would have to be listed on the application. Wife, business associate, anybody. Kate, who can evaluate foreign work experience for a C33? Any engineer, construction, or contractor professional with a license or only with a C33 license who should sign a certificate of work experience. So as I stated before, there's about 7 options. It does not have to be your employer. It does not have to be a licensed contractor. It does have to be somebody who has firsthand experience of your experience that you obtained in that foreign setting, in another state. Any of those recommended people can be your certifier. Bianca, how many certifiers can you have? Well, depending on how many different employers that you had to meet that 4-year requirement or the 48 months. Let's say you worked at ABC company for 3 years and 2 months and XYZ company for the remaining time. You would have 2 different certification of work experiences. If your certifier is the same person who saw you work at ABC and XYZ, I mean, it could be possible that you only have 1 certifier and they've completed both certification of work experience forms for you. If you have a different certifier for each employer, then, it's dependent upon that. How many work experience forms that you submit and who actually saw you do the work. If you have 10 employers, and it's 10 different people who saw you do the work, then obviously you might have 10 certifiers. J. Raj, as a project engineer for heavy civil work or roadway and bridges work, may I be eligible to get the A General Engineering Contractor license? So, when it comes to the A General Builder, did you work for a licensed contractor? Did you perform the work that is outlined in our description of the A General Engineering Contractor? Again, if it's drawing up plans, if it's not hands-on or supervision of the classification, and it doesn't meet the criteria of the description of the classification, I would state that no, you might not be eligible for the general engineering contractor license. However, if you have a degree because you are a project engineer and you're doing civil work, you might want to send that in also, your transcripts, your official transcripts, so that we can maybe assess your education to help with that work experience. However, you do need to have the hands-on or the supervision in the A General Building, the A General Engineering. Fawn, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, we do not, qualify you here because we don't have really the details of that. So what I recommend, you can use the experience, but you have to submit your application for us to review the experience and then give you a feedback. Because with this much information, we can't really tell. But I do definitely recommend that you submit your application if you have actually experience doing that work, and we go from there. But we cannot verify or qualify you online here.
Okay. Right, the application states that we can send the transcripts directly to the CSLB, but during the presentation, it was stated we need to send the transcript instead. What should I do if I have submitted my application already and asked my university to send my transcript directly to you? Is it still required if I'm a registered professional engineer where the transcript is already taken into account? So if your application is already here and let's say you don't have 4 years experience within the last 10 years listed on your application, I would suggest to have your official transcripts sent by your school directly to CSLB. They can reference your application fee number, they can reference your name. CSLB will need to have them in order to possibly give you credit for the classification, towards the classification that you've applied for. It is required. If you want to use education as part of your work experience, you will need to send in your official transcripts, regardless that if you're a registered professional engineer with a different board or bureau of the state. So my dad will be my certifier. What box do I check for the relationship section? Well, you can do business associate. You can do employer if you worked for your father. If he's a contractor license holder, it can be contractor. It's dependent upon what the relationship is with him. If he works side by side with you, it could be fellow employee. It's just dependent upon what your father saw you do firsthand in your experience. Also, my father is a General B licensed contractor. When filling out the application for my own General B license, do I just put his company name as my own? He is a sole proprietorship. So if you're filling out an application for your own license, you're not going to put his company name. If he is where you gained your experience on your certification of work experience form, he would definitely be your employer. And in part one, and then in part two, he could fill out the portion for the certifier. But when you're applying for your own license, you're going to select your own business name. So I'm not certain if you're talking about the certification of work experience or the actual business name of your employer on the certification of work experience form. What can a B1, which is a B, do compared to a B2? So a B can do your structural alterations to your existing building, to a building that's going to be built. It can install your plumbing, your electrical, your HVAC, whereas your B2 can only is limited to working on existing residential wood frame structures, and there can be no structural alterations. They can't install or extend your electrical or plumbing systems and cannot install or replace your HVAC, whereas your B could if it was part of the structural component with the 2 unrelated trades. B2 is 3 unrelated trades. So the B is definitely more, is allowed to do a lot more. B2 is for remodeling, it's for renovations, on a residential home. So it's not going to allow you to do all the big things that a B builder could do. You're not going to be able to build. I hope that answers your question, Junior. Jennifer, qualifier on your procurement salesperson. You are already able to sign your contracts, alter your contracts, and go out and meet with your customers. The only time you would have to have HIS is if a person not listed on your license is going out to do those things, to alter an agreement, a contract, to put a new contract in order, to sell your merchandise. Then you would have to have a registered HIS, but you as a person of personnel on your license do not have to be registered. Trinity, my company is a California corp and I will be working as an apprentice under a qualifying individual. Well, I need bond insurance and workers' compensation is carried because they are an employee. All corporations, sole ownerships, LLCs, partnerships are required to have the bond requirements, as well as workers' comp if they hold a certain classification or if there's employees listed or an RME. You as an individual, no, but the company could be subject to those. Again, a bond is always required for the company. The workers' comp is dependent upon the classification and if there's an employee listed on the license. Or if there's employees that aren't listed on the license and you go out limited partnership or a partnership, they would have to be. You'll receive a corporation registration number for the California Secretary of State for corporations, an LLC registration number for your LLC, and an FEIN number for partnerships or limited before submittal. Sandy, does a master's in project experience? So again, the credit that you could possibly obtain from your official transcripts would go hand in hand with whatever classifications that you're applying for. It could substitute up to 36 months, as per the slide that's showing on the workshop at the moment. However, you would still have to have hands-on experience or be a supervisor for a person for a company that is working, in the classification that you're applying for. It would not be substituted for all of the experience, but it definitely could give you experience credit, education. But yeah, it wouldn't be for the whole kit and caboodle. Again, you'd have to have a minimum of 1 year work experience that someone would have to certify on the certification of work experience form. Kate, does master's degree in engineering give any amount of credit? Again, Kate, for everybody watching, we do have the slide up. We can't guarantee what your degree will give you. It would have to be submitted with your application or after your application's been submitted, and it would go hand in hand with the classification that you're applying for. We cannot predetermine how much credit you can get without first reviewing your application and the transcripts. Erica, can I list my wife on my license if she will be managing? Also, can my wife register as an HIS for my general B? So, Erica, it depends. Is the license a sole ownership? Because only one person is generally listed on a sole ownership, so they can't be on the license. They can be an employee, and they could definitely be registered as an HIS with the license if it's a sole ownership. If it's a corporation, an LLC, you could add them if that's what you desire, or you could register them as an HIS to do business for you, for your company, your corporation, or your LLC. If you are a partnership, it is important to know no people can come on or be removed after it's established. Otherwise, it does cancel out your partnership or limited partnership. So you could not add or subtract people from them. You could still register an HIS though for a partnership if that was general project. You may want to finalize permits, possibly inspections, and who else worked on the project with you and what they did. So CSLB does want to see, we do need to be able to ascertain your role in the project and that you did what you're claiming on the owner builder. I've seen as low business in California, or sorry, in the US and sent to us, if it's just class courses and transcripts. Heather, if I'm the qualifier and owner, how would I answer Section 3, Line 7, and my partner is half owner 50-50 and put on Section 4 for California Corporation? So section 3, if we're talking about page 1, is about the qualifier. So if you were the qualifier, you would put your 50% owner. If your other person who's going to be listed on this license, again, corporation, LLC, or partnership, holds the other portion. Now, the personnel will not be listed, will not be prompted to list a percentage. It's only the qualifier that we're concerned about as far as percentage of ownership. A sole owner owes 100%, so there are no partners, there is no 50-50. You would put 100%. The other entities could be less than 100%, however, that needs to be listed. So it is dependent upon what you're applying for. Again, if it's a sole ownership, there's no 50-50, it is 100% for the qualifier. Section 4 is the additional personnel section. So you just put that person's name, fill out all of their information, full legal name, social date of birth, they sign it, they date it, they print their name. And again, no percentage of ownership is there. It's based on what the qualifier is going to own of the corp, LLC, or partnership. Sandy, looks like others have asked similar questions, so you can skip my question. Thank you, Sandy. Mike, I'm a level 3 high power EV charging station manufacturer vending company. Should my company have a C10 license or in order for letting us to perform on-site troubleshoot, repair, and maintenance service over the multiple job locations in California? Fuad, you want to chime in on this?
Can you read that question to me one more time?
I am a level 3 high power EV charging station manufacturer vendor company. Should my company have a C10 license in order for letting us to perform on-site troubleshoot, repair, and maintenance service over the multiple job locations in California?
Yeah, for that one, I would refer them to the deputy classification. Okay. Yeah, classifications at cslb.ca.gov. Our deputy will ask you more questions about what you were doing so they can better guide you in what you can or cannot do or whether you need a license or not.
Right. Thank you, Fuad.
Sure.
Ciao. My father is a General B licensed contractor, sole proprietor. He is not retiring. I want to get my own license, but still keep the family company. What form do I fill out? So if he's not retiring, you can't take over the family company. If you're applying as your own individual for a license, you're going to use the original application for a contractor's license. Your father, I'm assuming, again, is your certifier, so he's going to complete your certification of work experience form. And again, if you received your experience from him, he could be the contractor, he can be the employer, he can be your business partner or business associate. But if he's not retiring, you cannot take over his license. There are certain qualifications that are needed to take over a license, and this doesn't sound like it would be one of them. Now, as a sole owner, we do not mandate, and there is no law that allows people not to have the same business name as a sole owner. So there could be a ton of D'Onofrio general buildings. Seriously doubtful, but or Johnson General Contracting. There can be thousands of them in our database. When it comes to name style, we don't mandate the sole ownership. It does have to be in compliance with the classification. However, it's not registered with the California Secretary of State. So if, let's say, Dad's company is John's General Building. Obviously, if your name is not John, you cannot use John's General Building. But let's say it's your last name. Let's say it's Johnson's General Building. You could still be a Johnson's General Building. You would be issued a brand new license number because, again, you're not taking over your father's license because he's not retiring or he's not stepping away from his license. But you would receive a brand new license number. But you could, it's a possibility, use the same name as long as it's in compliance with our state law. And again, it's just going to be your application for a or for a contractor's license. Mike, it looks like you asked this already. Yes, so we did answer your same question that was submitted just a little bit lower. Heather, on your application, when not NA, when not applicable, do we just put NA on the first line or every space? Well, it's dependent on what that is. If you're applying for a sole ownership, you're filling out page 1 in its entirety. Page 2, which is section 4, you don't have to put anything because there's not going to be any additional personnel listed on your sole ownership. On your required questions, you are required to answer number 10 through 14. 13 and 14 are dependent upon your title. And the second section of the required questions, those are only if they apply to you, when it has to deal with reciprocity, with your, do you have education that you want us to look at? Are you a military member? Those you don't even have to submit, or you can submit those blank because those are not applicable to you. And the second page of the required questions aren't required, so you don't need those. When it comes to the work experience form, you do not want to put NA. You do want to fill that out in its entirety in part 1 for you, part 2 for your certifier. It does have to be submitted, and every portion has to be completed. If you don't have a middle name, because this seems to be an issue with a lot of applications that come in, we do ask per the instructions that you put NMN for no middle name. You could put not applicable, the NA, that would be fine also, but do not leave it blank. Because then we're going to have to ask you, hey, do you have a middle name? Could you please give me your middle name? So there are some things that you could possibly use NA, but there are other things that we don't recommend that you do use that, because we might have to send your application back to get it corrected. And then again, we have to start not from scratch, but we have to start over with your process. Chin, B and B2 are very close. I'm interested in remodeling. Do I have to get first B and then B2, or can B do B2 responsibilities? So they're not very close. They are very different. Again, a B1 allows you to do allows you to build from the ground up a home, a structure, a habitable structure. A B2 does not. A B2 allows you to work on an existing residential wood frame structure. You can't do any alterations to a load-bearing wall or partitions. You cannot install or replace an HVAC system. So they are very, very different. The B allows you, again, from the ground up to build a building. Again, with your B, you're doing a structural component with 2 unrelated trades. So maybe you're installing the electrical and the HVAC. Maybe you're doing the plumbing. There are your minimum of structural and the 2 unrelated. Your B2 has to have 3 unrelated. And again, as I stated, they cannot be structural and cannot be installation or replacement of or an extension of electrical, plumbing, or HVAC systems. Now, you are allowed with the B2 to modify the existing systems, like install your recessed lighting and alter plumbing, but nothing above and beyond that. So they are very different. Some people I've seen apply for the B3 or the B2 with their 3 unrelated trades. Will have fencing, painting, and let's say landscaping. They don't even have to go hand in hand with each other, but, be related. But you have to show those 3 unrelated trades in order to apply for that B2 and have that experience. So they are very different of what's allowed and what's not allowed. Kate, Could a certification of work experience form from a foreign certifier be signed by email, or should we have the original signature? You can definitely send it via email. We do ask that it is a signature, that it's not a font. I believe we are allowing DocuSign. Is that correct, Fod?
That is correct.
But we don't want to see a font because who signed it? You can send it via email. It doesn't have to be the wet signature. It can go back and forth like that.
The best way would be if you just email them the certification of work experience, they print it, complete it, sign it, and scan it and email it back to you, then you can send it to us. That would be the best course of action.
Erica, can my wife also register as an HIS for my general B? So Erica, again, if your wife is not listed on the license, let's say it's a sole ownership again, you can have your wife register as an HIS and then be associated with your license as an HIS. If it's a corporation or a LLC or a general partnership and they're not listed on the license already, you can add them to a corporation or LLC, or you can opt to do the HIS registration and have them associated that way. For a general partnership or a limited partnership, again, nobody can come off or on. So the best would be to do an HIS registration with them associated with the license. So it is really based upon, is your wife already listed on your license? Are they going to be listed on your license, and what entity you're applying for? Barish, for a C10 license total, how much credit is required? I'm not certain if you're asking about experience or if you're asking about transcripts, but all classifications are required to have 4 years, 48 months of experience in the classification that you've applied for. Again, if it is transcripts, we would have to see the transcripts with your application in order to make the determination if you're going to receive education credit for that. And again, it's based upon what you have on your degree, or let's say your classes that you've taken versus the classification that you've applied for. Gerald, I've been working as a self-employed handyman for 7 years. I'm applying for a B2 license. Do I go back to every customer as my certifiers or just larger jobs? That's up to you. If you could, just as a recommendation, if you could do your larger jobs and let's say, again, have 3 years with one person and 1 year with another, it makes less paperwork for you to submit to CSLB. But we do have to have, that 4 years. So if that means you don't have larger jobs and you do have to have 10 separate work certificates, that might have to happen. But I would recommend to make it less paperwork if you could do the larger jobs, as long as they're within the last 10 years and you have 4 years full-time experience. Junior Navarro, what are the qualifications for the B1? So your experience, again, is going to be a structural component because you can build a house from the ground up with 2 unrelated trades. It might be helpful to advise at this time that there's a couple classifications that you can't do as a B, which would be your C57 well and the C16 fire suppression. So other than that, if you have a structural component that you've done for 4 years and you've been doing installation of electrical, painting, drywall, plastering, plumbing, if you have that structural component with the 2 unrelated trades, it's a possibility that you could apply for it. Again, 4 years out of the last 10 years experience is what would be needed. Ray, thank you for answering all of the question. I have been previously listed as an RMO on a contractor's license. The application for states that the certification of work experience may not be required. Can you please clarify? Ray, it's dependent upon how long ago you were a qualifier. If it's current and it's the same classification and you qualify for a waiver, then you're not going to need to submit the certification of work experience. However, we would have to look at that. We would check your prior license history once we do receive your application to see, were you licensed in the classification that you're now applying for? Was it within a certain amount of time? Is it still current? So it is based on a couple different scenarios. If you want to send me or send us an email at licensing@cslb.ca.gov and give me a little bit more information. You can make it attention to me. I can give you a little bit more information about the waiver application. Sandy, what if I'm an owner builder of a residence from 1998 to 1999? Unfortunately, Sandy, that is out of the work experience 10-year allotment allowed by state law. So we could not go back that far. Again, all work experience, no matter what classification that you're applying for, does have to be 4 years out of the last 10 years from the date that you submit your application. We cannot go back any further. Jocelyn, can the certifier be an officer in the corporation and listed on the license as long as they are not the qualifier? The certifier, again, Jocelyn, can be anyone, pretty much anyone. Your options on your certification of work experience allows for a business associate, which I would consider an officer, an employer, fellow employee, again, a union representative. It can be any of those. Your officer, another officer, as long as they have firsthand knowledge of your experience, can be your certifier for your work experience. The qualifier can be your, if they have firsthand knowledge, they can be the your certifier for your work experience. It's just someone who has that firsthand knowledge. Sandy P, can I build as an owner builder of an ADU to gain experience? As long as that ADU that you're building, again, has a structural component with the two unrelated trades. The B is looking for your, again, structural component with the two unrelated trades. And you would complete the owner builder form, the project list, and again, you would have to have your permits listed on the owner builder project list, as well as your permits with the application, so that we could ascertain your role in the projects that you have submitted. Erica, how long is application process once submitted prior to getting exam date? So as we mentioned, we do receive thousands of applications per year, and hundreds probably each week. Right now we do have a little bit of a backlog. I'd say probably just a guesstimate, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. For a more accurate reading, you might want to check our website under our current processing times, which is updated every Monday morning, to let you know, hey, if this application was submitted on December 29th of last year, this is what we're currently working on. We do have quite a few techs working on all of the applications, and we are doing our best to get everything out in a timely manner. Yeah, if you want a more accurate reading, please check our website, and it'll tell you, compared to obviously what today's date is, what we're actually working on in each department by the application type. Erica, does my wife have to also get fingerprinted if she's listed on my license? Everybody listed on the license has to be fingerprinted. HIS also, if they register to be a HIS to be associated with your license, they will also have to meet the fingerprint requirements. Ambarish? For C10 license, total, how much credit is required? I think you asked this question before. And again, 4 years full-time experience within the last 10 years. And I cannot give you a education credit exact amount. Again, we cannot pre-qualify you for that. That would have to be submitted with your application in order for us to determine if we were going to give any education credit for that. Heather, so the law and business, is that the first test taken? Generally, it's the trade. From what I've seen, is the trade is done.
I jump in there for
Okay.
this one. Right now, PSI exam administrating our exams. So once we set you up for exam, you will receive a letter from us with a link to their site, and you can actually choose the time you take the exam. Law separate, trade separate. It's up to you which one you want to take first or last, or together, or separate days. So that would be in your hands once we refer you to the exam. Now, at this point, I'm sorry, we're running out of time. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to send it at licensing@cslb.ca.gov. Thank you for your questions. If at some point you need to reschedule your exam, you can get that process started by dropping an email to exams@cslb.ca.gov. We have also put together a list of available resources for women considering a career in construction. If you haven't already, be sure to download this presentation to get them. You can download the presentation on a green banner on the top of our homepage at www.cslb.ca.gov. If you are watching the archive video of this workshop on our YouTube page, you will find a link to the presentation down below.
Okay, we welcome your comments or topics for future webcasts. Just drop us an email to social@cslb.ca.gov. Special thanks to our licensing division and public affairs office for their help on this workshop. The Get Licensed to Build workshop is a copyrighted production of the California Contractor State License Board. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.